Hey everyone, and welcome to Pulp Hero Audio. Just as a side note, you may be thinking to yourself, hey dude, aren't you making videos? So why is it Pulp Hero Audio? Well, I started off doing audio-only recordings and kind of tried to expand from there. But also, hey, it sounds kind of retro and old-fashioned to me, so I just like it. So, Pulp Hero Audio it is. Okay, but moving on. This is the third of three installments in which I am reviewing and comparing the first issues of three different eras of Conan the Barbarian comic books. You can go back and watch the first two videos in which I review the Conan the Barbarian #1, published by Marvel Comics in 1970. And from there, we took a look at Conan #1 from 2003, published by Dark Horse Comics. Which brings us to our third era of Conan comics, and that is Conan the Barbarian #1. Again, the license leaving Dark Horse, once again back at Marvel Comics. Conan the Barbarian #1 from 2019. So we are in present day, modern era comics, and we'll see how that in any way affects what we get, because 2019 certainly different than 1970, and I gotta say, I think 2019 is a bit different than even 2003, although it may not be, that many years ago. So the first thing we see is the cover by artist Asad Ribic. Again, I hope I pronounce these creators' names correctly. So we see the trend continuing, just as we saw with Dark Horse's Conan #1. We see the trend continuing of the artist who does the cover is not the artist that does the interior. Because the artist that does the interior is Mahmud Asrar. Again, I hope I'm pronouncing his name correctly. If not, I apologize, sir. And it is written by Jason Aaron. Of the current group of fairly well-known Marvel Comics writers at the time, or at this time, I should say, Jason Aaron was probably the most natural choice, having had a lot of experience writing Marvel's Thor. Prior to this issue debuting, Aaron even posted this picture showing, part of his collection of Conan books and things that he has had for a long time, kind of establishing his cred, if you will, as a real Conan fan, and how much he wanted to do this assignment. And that's a good thing, I think. I think it at least shows that he does have a love for the character. He has a passion for this project, if nothing else. So let's jump right into it. So, of course, we start with the passage from Robert E. Howard from the Nemedian Chronicles. Know, O Prince, that between the years when the oceans drank Atlantis and the gleaming cities, if you're familiar at all with Conan, you know the passage I'm talking about. And, I think that's probably just going to be the standard from now on. Any new Conan project, we're going to start off with those words. Past that, we get this big 2-page spread showing little snippets, little scenes, little moments of past Marvel Conan comics, going back to the Roy Thomas, Barry Windsor Smith, John Buscema, that era of Conan comics, which makes me wonder, are they trying to say here that this new comic follows the continuity of the old Marvel series? I mean, are they saying those stories are part of the Marvel canon of the character, or is this just their way of honoring the past? I really don't know. It's not really made clear if that's what they're going for. If they're saying that, okay, the 270 plus issues written beforehand, back when Marvel had the license before Dark Horse, are they saying, okay, those stories happened, they are part of the history of the timeline of the Conan you're about to read about, or again, is this just their way of honoring the past? I really don't know. That's not exactly clear. So we find that the story itself, again, going to be a little bit different than the past. These days, comics, you rarely get a one and done story. You rarely read one issue and get a beginning, middle, and end to a story. Usually it's part of a larger narrative. And that kind of seems to be the case here, as we see that this one is called The Life and Death of Conan, Part 1. The Weird of the Crimson Witch. I definitely like the subtitle, The Weird of the Crimson Witch. I'm not sure quite what to make out of the main title, The Life and Death of Conan. Okay, more about that later. So, from there, Aaron basically does kind of an interesting thing, I think. In 2 pages, he does sort of a bookend type deal of Conan's life. He tells us Conan's beginnings, born on a battlefield in Samaria, wild adventures and killing of monsters and battles and things like that, to eventually become Conan the King. So I think that's kind of an interesting way to start it, just kind of bookending things with Conan's beginning and Conan's end, if you will. Okay, so that sort of tells the reader that, all right, we know where Conan begins, we kind of know where Conan ends, and everything in the middle is up for grabs. Speaking of in the middle, Aaron seems to be going for a bit more of a Robert E. Howard approach to the storytelling, as far as he's just jumping into a particular point in Conan's life. He doesn't seem to be necessarily following a strict chronology. Now, yes, the story is connected. There are elements where it all ties together, but as far as telling this very linear sort of story, like Dark Horse and the old Marvel comics, he doesn't seem to be doing that. He's just sort of throwing us into the middle of Conan's life. To a certain point, here he is. He's done some things, he hasn't done others. We're just kind of in the thick of it, and let's go along for the ride. So I do think it was kind of interesting, kind of funny in a way, as we truly begin this story, where we are introduced to Conan, once we get past the bookends of Born on a Battlefield versus King Conan, when we really get into the story, the first thing we see, it is basically identical to the way that Dark Horse Comics introduced the character back in 2003. It is Conan giving out this, wild, savage, feral sort of roar, and he has a big sword in his hand, and he's lopping a guy's head off. And of course the blood is spraying everywhere because, again, we're not having to deal with the comics code anymore. But I think it's just interesting that even though it's a different time in Conan's life, even though he's dressed differently, even though the circumstances are different, it's basically the exact same introduction that Dark Horse gave us. It's a cry, it's a battle cry, a war cry, as he's lopping a guy's head off. Okay, I guess it worked 16 years ago. Maybe it will work now as well. And very ominous, it says that this is not just a tale of how Conan lived. This is the story of how he died. Okay, now, obviously, Jason Aaron may be kind of messing around with the reader a little bit, building some suspense. Perhaps death is symbolic here. It's not really death per se. But of course, that does make you wonder, would Jason Aaron, would he dare to actually depict the way Conan dies? Because as far as I know, no writer has ever had the guts to do that, and I really don't think they should. Robert E. Howard did not write a death for Conan the Barbarian, and honestly, I don't think that anyone should. And deep down, I don't think Jason Aaron will either. I think, again, he's just kind of building suspense. Death may not actually be, really death. It could be symbolic. Who knows? So I don't think that's actually what's going to happen. But if he did, I don't know. Okay, so moving on. So we see Conan now is basically a pit fighter, a gladiator, making some extra money, basically. We seem to be somewhere in the middle of, or perhaps toward the end of, the thieving phase of his life. But, he apparently needs to earn some extra coin. So we've got him in the fighting pits in Zamora. Which I think is interesting because, of course, the movie Conan the Barbarian from the 80s with Arnold Schwarzenegger famously had Conan as a gladiator. And I know a lot of non-Howard stories have gone, the gladiator route with Conan. They have shown him in that type of vocation, if you will, the gladiatorial pit fighting sort of thing. Although I've read all of Howard's Conan stories, I can't remember everything exactly, but as far as I know, as best I can remember, I don't remember Howard ever depicting Conan as a gladiator or even mentioning that he ever was one. Not to say that he couldn't have been. It would certainly make sense for a guy like Conan to have earned some extra cash that way. So it's fine, but I do think it's interesting that Aaron is taking that beat, which in my opinion is, straight out of the Arnold Schwarzenegger movie. Although, of course, I know books and other things have done the gladiator thing with Conan as well. There is an interesting exchange as Conan is fighting his opponent. We find that his opponent, who is fighting with a spear, that this spear, it's all kinds of special. It says the spear was older than he was, older than the fighter, hewn from a hell nail tree. Kind of cool idea, a hell nail tree. Found in the darkest, most impenetrable jungles of the Isle of Skelos. So Conan's opponent is using this, very special weapon. And then it just says that Conan had stolen his rusty sword the night before, after losing his previous one in a drunken stupor. Which I think is kind of a neat thing that Aaron does here, because in Howard's original stories, it never seemed like Conan ever valued one weapon above another. It wasn't like Conan ever pulled a sword out of a stone, or like in the the Arnold movie where he finds the Atlantean sword in the cave and everything. There just never was any weapon that was special to Conan. Or anything like that. So I think it's kind of neat that he's just fighting with some stolen rusty sword, because those things just aren't special to Conan. He just needs something to kill with. And as Conan is fighting, we see kind of a mysterious, beautiful, scantily clad woman who is interested in Conan, even placing a wager on him, of course. Immediately, that should get our attention. Okay, beautiful woman, Conan story. And Conan continues to fight. And it's in this fight that Aaron probably wrote definitely the best line of this particular issue. And he had several good ones in this issue. But I thought this one really summed up Conan and his worldview, because as he's fighting, his opponent just says, "What sad and feeble gods do you worship where you come from, boy? Whoever they are, you should pray to them now." And Conan says, "Crom," and then he proceeds to headbutt the guy and stab him. And then he goes on to say, "But Sumerians never pray, and even if we did, Crom wouldn't give a damn." That pretty much sums it up right there. I mean, why pray to a god that really doesn't care? And that's kind of always been the thing with Crom. The idea, the Sumerian belief that he gives you certain things at birth, and then, buddy, you are on your own, okay? He's not going to help. He's not going to interfere. He's not going to do anything for you. Crom doesn't care. And I thought that was a great way to illustrate that. So then we get a scene showing this, that our beautiful woman, she's not only beautiful, but she's also deadly, as she takes out a couple of opponents, a couple of guys who sort of mess with her a bit. And then she meets and has an exchange with Conan. And I gotta say, I'm impressed. This is 2019. We live in a very politically correct era now. Yet the dialogue between Conan and the woman, it did feel like Conan. He wasn't this... they didn't modernize him too much. Just the way he greets her. She says, "Congratulations, Sumerian. You're a bit sloppy, but I've seen worse." And Conan says, "Same to you." I thought that was a good little exchange. Conan is not bowing and scraping or anything like that. So we move on, and naturally, of course, Conan and the beautiful woman hook up. And I gotta say, I've looked at 3 different eras of Conan #1, and this would be the first issue where Conan not only encounters a beautiful woman, but he hooks up with her rather explicitly. Of course, in the old Marvel 1970s edition Conan, while there was a beautiful woman in that issue, there certainly wasn't anything physical going on between her and Conan. Even in 2003's Conan #1 from Dark Horse Comics, while he did have a romantic encounter, it was fairly subtle, by moonlight in the dark, nothing like that. This one, Aaron kind of goes for it. It's a pretty passionate scene, clothes strewn on the floor. And then, once again, we kind of take that beat from the movie, as in the middle of their passion, the woman transforms into this hideous, monstrous figure. Which, again, if you have seen the Arnold Schwarzenegger movie, I will get his name out eventually. If you've seen that movie, of course, most of you remember Conan's encounter with the woman at the crossroads. Or was it at the crossroads? Or did she tell him to go to the crossroads? There was definitely something about crossroads in there. But anyway, it's basically the same thing. Conan is in the middle of making passionate love to this woman when she transforms into this hideous monster. And not only that, she apparently poisons him as he passes out, and Conan wakes up to be chained down to some sort of altar in some kind of temple, and we find that the woman is actually a witch that serves some kind of demon by the name of Razazel that she is trying to raise or resurrect or something to that effect. And evidently, the key to that, the key to her magic, the key to her blood magic, is she needs the blood of a warrior who has cheated death many times. Okay, I'll take that, Jason Aaron. That kind of works, I think, for this kind of world, this kind of setting. Okay, the blood of a warrior who has cheated death. That definitely fits Conan. That's a motivation that makes sense to me for why this witch would seek out Conan. Now, she does make this comment about there's a strange air of destiny about you. Again, I'm not a big fan of the whole idea of Conan ever being aware of any kind of destiny or fate or anything like that. But anyway, she seems to think that, Conan's blood is definitely the ticket, but our boy Conan is not going to go down without a fight as he, breaks his chains and goes to town on the witch, but she has a horde of the undead there to protect her as she raises some of the fallen warriors that she had sacrificed before, warriors whose blood did not quite cut muster here. So Conan is fighting these undead creatures, and again, Aaron has some pretty good lines here as Conan is sort of thinking, how do you slay a room full of raging dead men, Conan wondered. There was only one possible answer at hand, the same way you slay the living, one savage swing at a time. And we get this full page shot of Conan just laying in to this undead horde, into these skeletal warriors. At this point, I would mention the artwork of Mahmud Asrar. Yeah, there are moments when it's just kind of okay, but let me tell you, I was not at all familiar with this artist at all. This was literally my first introduction to this artist's work. And when he is on, okay? And there are definitely some gorgeous pages, some great panels in this comic. And if he's anything like Barry Windsor Smith in the sense that he will just get better as the series progresses, then we are in for a treat, because this guy is quite good. It definitely appears that he cares, that he's truly putting a lot into this project. And because quite honestly, looking at a lot of other comics out there, sometimes I feel like these artists these days are just phoning it in. It's like they just don't really care. And I do not get that sense from Asrar here. He definitely seems to care, and he is drawing a great Conan. And I'm definitely looking forward to what he brings to the character in the future, assuming that he does not slack off, back off, get lazy, plateau, or worse thing, they bring in an inferior artist a few issues in, it's nice when artists commit to a project, you know? That's another thing we just don't seem to see as much in modern comics. An artist really commit. And I'm hoping that, Mahmud Asrar will be an exception to that, and he will continue to work and improve on this book because he is quite good. I enjoy looking at his artwork a lot. So back to the story. Conan has, again, a little exchange with our witch, and he basically severs or nearly severs her head and leaves her for dead with her temple burning. And you would think that would be the end of the story, but then Aaron does kind of an interesting thing. He jumps forward in time all the way to Conan the King. Which makes me wonder, as this series goes on, is that what we can expect to see? Is Aaron going to kind of jump around in different points in Conan's life, but sort of connect the threads into one cohesive story? That's ambitious, but if he can pull it off, I think that's really interesting. As we now see Conan as a king, on the battlefield, he's older, but still clearly very hale and hearty, still very Conan, even though he does talk about, having sore muscles and things like that, just to remind us of the fact that he is supposed to be, a few decades older. And while finishing up this battle, he encounters a couple of children on the battlefield collecting the dead. And of course, right off the bat, you will notice that, these kids look very familiar. Well, they just look, to me at least, they look like younger versions of the witch that we saw, the younger Conan just dispatch. So you're kind of like, okay, what's going on here? And so Conan is talking to the kids, and then all of a sudden the witch returns. The Crimson Witch appears, and she still looks basically like she did the way Conan left her. It looks like her head has kind of been sewed back on, and she still has the bruises and this bloated tongue. She looks, barely alive. And of course, Conan is quite surprised to see her. Impossible that she could still be alive, that she could be back in his life like this. And Conan even tries to protect the children, but of course they are her children. Exactly how that works, in what way are they her children, we really don't know at this point, but they are her children, and the kids stab Conan in the back while he's trying to protect them. Oh, how dare they. So we end our first issue with King Conan on the ground with 2 knives in his back. Okay, so I'm intrigued, Mr. Aaron. I'm wondering where you are going to go from here. Okay, so gotta say, I was pleasantly surprised, because before reading this, I thought, this could really be a disaster, considering the kind of PC times in which we live. Could 2019 Marvel actually deliver a Conan the Barbarian that is even remotely in the spirit, in the essence of Robert E. Howard's character? And at least with this first issue, I do feel like that they didn't pull many punches. It was a pretty solid first issue. So, to kind of wrap it all up, how do our 3 eras compare? Wow. So, I'm going to have to say, when it comes to story, I'm going to give it just a bit to Dark Horse. I'm going to say that for this first issue, I feel like Aaron's work here just edged out Roy Thomas. As far as artwork is concerned, oh wow, that one is a really tough one because I really love Cary Nord's work, but at the same time, I think Barry Windsor Smith is awesome. And then Mahmud Asrar really brought it strong in this first issue. It would be hard for me to say. If nothing else, I can say that all three eras really came in strong with the artwork, and that's nice to see. And all three eras had solid debut issues. It's just a question of which series would be able to maintain that. Obviously, the original Marvel series, ran for 270 plus issues. The Dark Horse series, while it did sort of peter out toward the end, and they lost the license, it held strong for quite a few years as well. And we'll just see how well this new Marvel series, how well it will do. Can it maintain the quality for a long period of time? So, just one final thought on this particular issue. There is a little bonus. In the back, you actually get the first part of a prose novella called Black Starlight by John C. Hocking. It's going to be in 12 parts. I have not read it, not even part 1. I actually want to wait until all 12 issues have been released containing all 12 parts so I can read the story all at once. Okay, so that's all I've got on Conan the Barbarian #1, 2019. Published by Marvel Comics, written by Jason Aaron, with artwork by Mahmud Asrar. So, let me know what you guys think. Comment, like, subscribe. I'd love to hear from more Conan fans and of fans of this sort of genre in general. Thanks for listening. See ya.